So do you guys remember the recurring dream that I've been having of a tall blonde? And I theorized that this could be perhaps a parallel version of myself, the partner of a parallel version of myself, sort of infiltrating my dreams, or because we are entangled with our parallel selves due to quantum entanglement, right? So the way, for example, a twin would be, so I don't know if you guys have seen these studies done of twins when they take twins who are separated at birth, and then you bring them together and they've married the same partners, or they dress the same, or like they're doing the same thing, and even their names are pretty similar. So genetically, they're twins. In a way, they are entangled, and despite the distance and not even being like aware of their existence, they still end up echoing sort of similar lives. Now, if you're operating from the premise that we are in a multiverse, right, then if there are versions of yourself that you are genetically identical to in a parallel universe, then it would make sense that echoes of their life should and will infiltrate yours to the point where you end up maybe dreaming, or what your mind interprets as dreams, their lives, their experiences, and on certain levels even find yourself attracted to people in our universe that they, your parallel self, might be with, right? So I want to this is going to be a trippier than normal episode, but that's the function, right? What is the tagline of this podcast? This podcast will make you feel high. So strap in. Before I start the show, increase the speed. As the regulars know, I'm going to keep saying it, increase the speed. You don't have to listen at 1x speed. Every platform you listen to enables a listener, whether it's YouTube, Spotify, Anchor, Overcast, Google, Apple, whatever, you can increase the speed. Check it. You'll see whatever options, bump it up. Some people have let me know that they've been able to get up to 1.75 and comprehend the information. Some people are at 2. It doesn't matter. Just don't listen at 1x speed. Your brain, I promise you, will be able to take in the information. So you can view it as like dial-up versus like Wi-Fi, right? Listening at 1x speed is like taking in the information into your brain at like dial-up. Super fucking slow, right? Increase that shit. It's right there. I promise you, I can deliver the information. Your brain can take in the information faster than the speed in which I'm giving it to you. Okay, so increase the speed. And what that does is it also makes it more efficient with your time. You can listen to these podcasts, tend to be long, an hour and a half. You can listen to it at an hour or an hour and a half podcast in about 45 minutes. It's very efficient. And use this in audiobooks as well. That is how I've been able to get through as many books a month, or in a week, or in a day. Sometimes I will listen to 3 books in just one day. And I'll re-listen to the same book over and over again. So utilize these tools. Increase the speed. Your brain will be able to take in the information. And repeat. Listen. So every time you listen to a podcast, every time you listen to an audiobook, every time you listen, even you rewatch your favorite show, notice that you pick up things that you missed the first time, sometimes the second time. So the repeated exposure tells your brain we should be paying attention to this. And when you do that, you learn more, and you can get so much more from increasing the speed, right? You're efficient with time, and from repetition. So I always start each episode, or I've started to make it a habit of starting each episode by letting you guys know that this is an efficient way to learn, is through increasing the speed and through repetition. So now that that's out of the way, back to the program. So here we go. So I tend to repeat ideas as well for those of you who are listening for the first time. The narrative that I gave was you have twins who are separated at birth. They are genetically identical, And when they bring them back together, you find that their lives echo each other. Slight variations, but they're similar. Like the way they dress is pretty similar, even though they were raised apart. They end up marrying spouses with like that look alike, right? That maybe even have the same names. They end up in the same sort of jobs. And these are genetically similar in this universe. Now, you can't say that we are in a simulation, and you can't say that we are in a multiverse, or at least accept that as a belief without really thinking deeply about what the implications of that mean and thinking creatively about what that means, right? So what I'd said on my TikTok and on my YouTube and on my Instagram Reels, I have a video on all of those, I think, where I say if this is a simulation, then you have to look at every universe in the multiverse as a server, right? So there are avatars of you. They're not you. That's just your body, your vehicle that you are inhabiting right now. There are avatars of them in parallel universes. It's your consciousness is the driver. So on the Dark Oracle's Guide to the Multiverse, I actually explained this a bit like more in depth, using a vehicle, a Jeep, as an analogy. So the way I want you to see it is that the mirror image that you see is just a vehicle. It's just a mechanism in which you can use, or you have been given to navigate this dimension, the third dimension. Okay, so that's it. It's just a third dimensional machine. Every scientist, every doctor refers to the human body as a machine. The problem is we live in a materialistic society, and in an age that is deeply steeped in taking the formed as all that there is, while ignoring the invisible, or I should say invisible to the senses of your human machine body. Okay, and these senses are they perform limiting factions, right? So you, the real you, your consciousness is not a human being. You are just in a human being. You're in a human body. Your consciousness is God. We are all God in various forms. And I know it sounds eclectic, and I know it might sound out there, and I know it might sound to some esoteric, but it is. If you need a scientific sort of basis analysis, look up the one electron theory, the one electron universe. Physicists have posited that the reason why electrons have the same sort of underlining, what's the word I'm looking for? Underlining similarities. Like they're basically the same thing. So every single electron behaves in the exact same way. And so physicists, I think John von Neumann might have been the physicist that theorized this, but there have been others. But they said it's because it's the same electron existing simultaneously in just different forms. So to me, I will always utilize the Hermetic maxim, as above, so below, as and as an explanation, as a reflection, as a way to understand this world. So if an electron can do that, exist simultaneously in various forms, right, then on an ethereal level, the same thing is happening with her consciousness. So I say this is a one consciousness universe existing simultaneously in various forms. Okay, so then if that's the case, then this essentially, since the flow of time, you're going to have to listen to this a few times. I promise you it'll click. If the flow of time is an illusion and all of time is happening at once, then that means then that one consciousness existing simultaneously in multiple forms across all dimensions, not just across the multiverse, but across, because the multiverse only pertains to this dimension. There are other universes and other dimensions that a lot of us aren't even fathoming or even thinking about. So there are multiverses in the fourth dimension and the fifth dimension and the sixth dimension. It's one electron existing, or I should say one consciousness existing simultaneously. The flow of time is an illusion. All of time exists right now across all dimensions right now. And it's the one consciousness existing in various forms simultaneously right now. And that one consciousness then would be all-knowing because it exists in all forms. While we are restricted by our three-dimensional bodies, we wouldn't be as a fourth dimensional body or fifth dimensional body, right? So every dimension that your consciousness shifts through, you gain more, quote, knowledge. Well, that as you move closer and closer to the infinite source, to becoming that one consciousness, right? You become more and more omniscient. And I'm telling you, contained within you is that one consciousness, that one omniscient form, that one immortal form existing in a mortal body simultaneously right now, that one super intelligence, that one, whatever word you want to use to describe it, it's that one consciousness existing simultaneously in this illusion of form. But that is what you are. That is what you are. If you can imagine the electron just being one electron existing simultaneously, you can imagine the one consciousness being just one consciousness existing simultaneously in various forms. When I look at my friend, when I look at my family, when I look at my loved ones, it's me existing simultaneously in a grand illusion that is time, in a grand illusion that is existence. But that is how an immortal entity would have to exist in order to just handle the concept of existence forever. And that is what you are. And that is what I am. Okay, so I need you to hold on to that. Hold on to that as knowledge. Hold on to that, okay? Now let's take a step back. We're going to bring it down. We're going to ground ourselves back now. So, sort of. We're going to ground ourselves as we continue to talk about your parallel selves and parallel universes. So back to what I'm saying now. If twins in just this reality, in just this universe, if a twin separated at birth can still have a simultaneous experience with its other half while they're separated, knowing nothing of each other, their behaviors end up still sort of being the same, right? That should tell you then that it's the genetics, it's the code, right? Nurture can play some part and cause some slight variations, but for the most part, the code is the programming of your avatar. The code is your programming of your avatar. You are not the avatar. Your avatar is just the body machine, but the code, your genetic code, is the programming of the avatar. So then that must mean that you are entangled in a way with any entity across the multiverse, any avatar that looks just like you and has the same genetic information as you. So then that would mean that you, I've talked about this in the past, I have a short video of the Mirrorverse, but you would be entangled with parallel versions of yourselves, which could also then mean that the people that you seek out, the people say that they have a type. Well, that type could be determined by a strong emotional connection that a more, I don't want to say accomplished, but a different version of you might have with their partner. So let's say Jolie, my parallel self, maybe she goes by Joan or something like that. Yeah, everyone's got their nicknames, right? She has a deep emotional connection with a tall blonde, right? And because, let's say they were besties from birth or whatever, right? And then they just became like lovers through time or whatever it is, but they are established, they are connected, they are married even in the parallel universe without realizing that psychic connection that those two have across the multiverse starts to seep through into my mind, into my reality, because it's the same, we're entangled, it's the same sort of code. So the point where I start to now see her partner in my dreams, and it's recurring. The entity is, some of you who are regular listeners, I've described him in my dream. And just for those of you who don't know this, I am happily married, okay? I love my husband very much. And we have a very strong connection. He is absolutely my soulmate. We are sort of yin and yang together, polar opposites. And he's a great man and a beautiful partner. And he has made my life gorgeous, and I'm grateful for him. But this is happening, and I'm not going to disconnect. I've spoken to him about it as well. He got a little jealous. Like, he was like, yo, fuck that dude. And I get it. But this is real life. And I was a bit hesitant to record this episode because there was a part of me that was like, am I giving too much? But at the end of the day, this is my life. And these are my experiences. And so if the purpose is to sort of break down and explain the nature of reality, then I must consider all sources, and I must discuss all sources with you guys, with your minds, because the information that is unique to that has been gathered from my experiences and is unique to my experiences may very well serve you. And so I was hesitant to share this information, but I have to be honest for the sake of knowledge. And so that's why I sat down and I kind of debated going back and forth. I was going to talk about something else, but then I was like, I'm going to do this because there's somebody, even if it's one person, whose life changes by hearing this. Then I've played my role and I've done my part, and we'll move on. Okay, so going back to the story. For those of you who don't know, I had mentioned a couple of times. There was one episode I did on twin flames. Then there was another episode that I sort of followed up. And I basically said, look, I've been having the same recurring dream. But it's not the dream. The plot of the story does not recur. It is the individual that keeps persisting. And it started off sort of like one way. And now it's sort of growing into more of like a friendship. But every time I would connect with him in my dream, there was just this weird sense of familiarity, and I couldn't quite figure it out. And so I sort of played with the idea for a while of like, okay, what could this be? And I asked the greater intelligence that drives our simulated reality. Because once again, you cannot say we are in a simulation. You cannot say that this is a program without understanding that every program has an intelligence that controls it. And this reality itself is intelligent. And I'm telling you right now, if you are conscious and aware and sentient, and you don't exist in the mind that has been programmed, that told you, right? Because we are programmed to just wake up, live, work, die, repeat, right? So for most people listening to what I'm saying right now, it's either going to go over their head, or they're going to scoff, or they're going to have something ignorant to say. And that's fine. And this message is not for you. But the majority of people who listen to me and have been listening to me, they know where the fuck I'm coming from, and understand that I don't open my mouth to say things where I don't have at least $10 to back up what I'm saying. So while I might sound like crazy, and I don't like that word, but I might sound crazy to the uninformed. Those people who have read enough, who have been researching and reading, and I don't mean researching like just going on YouTube and watching a lot of YouTube videos, but have read this stuff. They know what I'm talking about is true. And so those are the people that I am talking to. If you're like, what is she talking? You probably wouldn't even have made it this far. And if it's sheer curiosity that you're listening for, please stop listening. This is not for you. I'm not speaking to people who are just listening to be entertained. There is a book list that has been added to my YouTube channel for those of you who have been asking, and you can see all the books that I've read and finished. And since then, I've read about 20 more, and I've also started downloading books from the letter U, 1lib.org, and then saving those books that I found on there, the PDFs. I've saved them to VoiceStream, and I'm listening there as well. So that's where I've been getting a lot of books as well. So free books there, quote unquote free. I'm not saying that you should do it. I don't know how legal it is, so I'm not encouraging people to do things that are illegal. I'm just saying that is how I I've gotten some, I try not to incriminate myself here. I've checked out some books that way. So I'm going to leave it at that. Do with that information what you will. Back to the story. So have to speak the truth, have to speak my truth, and those who need the information will take the information. So it is very tempting when you have a recurring dream of an individual to go, this means something. And yes, it does, but it doesn't always mean what you think it means. So the temptation there, especially as somebody who is married, consistently dreaming about one person that is not your spouse. Not that I don't believe in monogamy, but I do believe in commitment, right? And loyalty, right? So I don't believe that human beings are meant to be monogamous, but I do believe that if you make a commitment to be faithful to a person, that's something completely different, okay? So if you are in a, committed relationship with somebody, and then you're having a consistent dream about somebody else. In this society, we are programmed to take that to mean something else. And I'm not the kind of person to sort of operate on how I'm programmed. I'm the kind of person to go, okay, what does it mean? And what could it mean? And here's different scenarios as what that could mean. And the conclusion that I've come to, because it's not a recurring dream, it's a recurring person. And every time I interact with this individual, the story changes a bit. My conclusion is that this must be somebody who is important to the parallel version of myself that I am entangled with in another world. Look, if quantum computing can interact with versions of itself in parallel universes, what makes you think the same thing isn't happening to us? Your brain is a quantum computer. What makes you think the same thing isn't happening to us? That's a conclusion that I came to. And then once I came to that conclusion, I met the individual. I met him. It was an interesting experience. I'd microdosed. I'd taken a microdose. So I was in pure, I'd taken a microdose of mushrooms, and I was in pure observer status. I might have taken too much. So it started off as a microdose. And then I sort of was like, oh, I don't know if I took enough. And then I took a little bit more. And then it ended up accumulatively not being a microdose. It was like a mini dose as opposed to a microdose. So I was in pure observer status when I interacted with this human being. We just sat and met up with, for coffee, and had a conversation, and we talked. And I was taking everything in. There was no emotional connection. There was a spiritual connection. And there was a sense of familiarity. And I watched him, and he mirrored my actions. So we laughed in the same way, and our hands moved in the same way, and our gestures were the same. I'm an artist, you guys know. So I love speaking about art. And I've spoken about, I get chills when I speak about Van Gogh, and sometimes I move to emotion when I speak about artists, like other artists that I have an emotional connection with. And when I sat across from this individual, he spoke about Mozart and Beethoven and other musicians that he, like classical musicians, the way I speak about classical artists. And there was emotion there. And I watched his eyes sort of water. And I felt chills as he felt chills. And it was all very interesting to me. And when we sort of separated, I knew on some level, I didn't think, okay, this is my soulmate and I'm with the wrong person. No, that's not. And I have a very strong sense of intuition. So I trust my intuition. What I felt instead was I have to have been connected. There's a parallel version of myself that is connected to this individual in a parallel universe. And that is why this attraction sort of like occurred, why these meetings sort of occurred. And we spoke a little bit like after the meetup, but ultimately my conclusion was that I think that this individual possibly is a twin flame, but I don't think people think deeply about what a twin flame means, because I think they take it at a surface level. So people think, for example, and I've broken it down. Some people have defined a twin flame as your one consciousness split into two, like embodying two forms, and then there's this sort of like plot that occurs where one individual, typically the younger, when they connect, get sort of overwhelmed by the experience, and then they disconnect and they sort of run. And then there's this chasing period, and then eventually when they do connect again, then it clicks, and then they have to work out a lot of like issues. It's a karmic bond thing. That's how other people have defined it. But as you guys know, I have a brain. I can define shit the way I want to define shit. So I'm going to define twin flames differently. The reason why is, one, as I said at the beginning of this podcast, we are all one consciousness existing simultaneously in various forms. So then if that's the case, then we're all twin flames. So you can't say that there's just this one individual that you are sort of covalently bonded to or bound to, right? Because that doesn't make any sense. If we're all one consciousness in various forms, then a twin flame in theory would not exist, because we would all be twin flames. So that is my conclusion. It doesn't click for me. I think that's just another illusion. And you cannot, then I think from what I've read, people have said that, okay, well, you can only have one twin flame, yada, 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 but it doesn't take into consideration the fucking multiverse. It doesn't take into consideration parallel self. So I am choosing to, that's what you guys are here for, right? I choose to redefine a twin flame as this. I think that your twin, your genetic twin, you specifically, your twin, that means the physical twin, the genetic biological twin of yourself that exists, your parallel selves that exists in parallel universes, that is your twin. Their flame is your twin flame. Like it's a different way of looking at it. So I'll say that again. Yeah? So you've got your parallel self, right? And your parallel self is like your genetic twin, but in a parallel universe. And they have their soulmate, right? So they are already connected. That is their soulmate that they reincarnate with over and over again. So they have had time over time to form a bond. You have your soulmate here. But everything that I've read about twin flames, they separate it, and they say that twin flames are not the same as soulmates. And if you look at a soulmate as a person in one universe that you simultaneously reincarnate as, or not, I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. Soulmates are defined as, and you can have more than one, soulmates are defined as a certain group of souls that you loop and reincarnate with together over and over again. Like they're your soulmates, like the British term a mate is like your best friend. Right? So your soulmates can come back as like your brother or your cousin or your husband or your father or whatever, but you have a close connection with them, and it just feels like the moment you meet them, you just feel bonded, and because it's looking out through time, it's the same soul, right? Or the same consciousness that has had various experiences with you. So while we are one consciousness existing simultaneously in various forms, right? Your consciousness is still sort of, that fragment is still unique to you. And so your fragment, just like your consciousness has a day-to-day existence, it's the same consciousness that lives from day to day in whatever form that you're presently in, like your avatar right now. That same consciousness also reincarnates over and over again through time. And it reincarnates with other sort of, consciousness in time and through different dimensions, right? So those are your soul besties, right? But the twin flame is essentially your parallel self, their soulmate, their bond in a way. And so you are attracted to them, to the parallel versions of your parallel self, like their soulmate. You're attracted to them. And I think that it's more than one. I genuinely think so. You are attracted to them on an ethereal level because a parallel version of yourself is bonded to them on an ethereal level. And so you find yourself now drawn to certain individuals in this world because your parallel self is drawn to those individuals or is with those individuals in a parallel universe. It's wild. You got to loop it a couple of times, but it makes sense. So when you meet them, there's this sort of disconnect. And then that's why they run. That's the explanation that makes most sense to me. Because when you meet your soulmate, they don't run. They go, oh, you feel so comfortable and I love being around you and I want to be with you. And the moment you meet like your soulmate, it's like reuniting with your bestie, right? It's your soul bestie, right? But the twin flame, the reason why there's that separation and that friction and that all of these issues is because it's not a connection that is genuine to you. It's something that is ethereal, and it's more of a perpendicular connection than it is a parallel connection. Does that make sense? Right? Let me invert that. I think it's more of a parallel connection than it is a perpendicular connection. So your soulmates, these are perpendicular connections. Like you're like, think of like a bonds in a DNA. You just keep coming back together in different forms. So you guys are connected in that way. When you meet a twin flame, the twin flame is is your parallel selves, their connection, their perpendicular connection. And it's parallel to you. So you know on some level that, okay, this person is different, but I feel with them the way I would feel with a soulmate, but I know that they're not my soulmate because on some level, like, it's not clicking. But I feel like it should click, but it's not clicking. All right? And so that frustration is what causes that running. That's my narrative. That's what I think is going on. And I trust my brain, so I'm going to lean into it, right? That's what I think is happening, why there's a separation and then the fleeing. Because when I went into the situation, I wanted to go into the situation not emotional. That's why I took the microdose. I wanted to go into the situation fully aware without the emotions to distract me. And I wanted to be able to take things in and logically assess the situation without being emotionally connected or without being like swept up in like what was going on. I really wanted to take a calm, fully analytical stance on it and observe it. And that's why I took the mushrooms, and they did what they were intended to do. Because it was a non-emotional interaction. It was purely logical, and I was able to take in the situation as from a scientific perspective. Lots of parallels. We are both life path 7s. There was a lot of stuff happening with like numerology. We were like 3 years apart. But a lot of the things that he was saying made me realize that we weren't on the same level, if that makes sense. Like he was conscious and he was sentient, but literally I was like, I don't mean this in the wrong way, so don't take this the wrong way, but I was like 6 steps ahead of him in terms of being aware of what this reality really is. Like he's still sort of caught up in like the little sort of meaningless bullshit, but it's like the first tier of like conspiracy theories where, where people are saying like, you're there's a reason why your name is capitalized on a driver's license. So he's still talking about that. And he's still, on that level where, people are sheeple and he's still focused on what the government is doing. And he's focused on things like, secret societies and things like that. And, that level of like conspiracy theory. And I was there, but I was there like years ago. where I'm at now is it doesn't fucking matter. None of these conspiracy theories matter. The Bilderberg, it doesn't fucking matter. Look, the reality is it is what it is, and it performs its function. But your purpose is to get ready for the fourth dimension. It doesn't matter what the fuck is going on. It's like high school, right? Imagine you're in high school and you're sitting back and you're saying like, this is wrong and this is wrong and this is what's going on and teachers are doing this. At the end of the day, that's all well and good. Do what you can while you're in here, but your job is to prepare for the next place, is to prepare for like leaving. Like you are not coming back here, and you need to be prepared for. You need to prepare your will. You need to prepare for your will. You need to start working on mastering your form, mastering your body, controlling, hacking the avatar, being non-reactive, right? Like if you're still getting angry, if you're still if you're still sort of caught up on like minimal things, like if you're still envious, if you're still, losing your temper, if you cannot control your thoughts, if you cannot control yourself, if you cannot control your sexual sort of hangups, right? If you're still driven by your biological urges, all of the shit around that's going on, the masks, what is the thing that they, declaring yourself a sovereign individual, all of that stuff. It's just another distraction that the simulation throws at you to keep you from focusing on what you need to actually focus on, which is mastery of self. Know thyself. And so when we sat and we spoke, I realized like we're not on the same level. He's not ready. And the reason why I met with him was so I can sit and talk to you guys. Like, that's why. So remember, I keep saying there's a greater intelligence that sort of navigates my path. And so he popped up out of nowhere and he messaged me. I hadn't spoken to him in months. We had like connected online. So I'd never met him before. And so I didn't even look at him like that. I'd been dreaming. I had the recurring dream about this tall blonde. But I didn't put two and two together like it was him. Because one, it was online. It was like on, Instagram. So I didn't know like how tall he was or anything like that. And I didn't necessarily care. I get a lot of messages and I'm just sort of like, whatever, kind of going with it. And he happened to be like in my area. Well, I'm not going to say where I live. He happened to be in my area and we just got to talking, whatever. But I didn't think anything of it. Like he popped up. And then we kind of would talk about what was going on in the world. And I would sort of share my thoughts. And I think a lot of it made his head hurt and it went over his head. So then he like disconnected. I'm not going to stop being who I am. I'm not going to stop speaking my truth. If he cannot handle it, that's okay. I've struggled to get to the point that I'm in now. And so I cannot be anything other than what I am. But I never really put two and two together in the sense of, it's fucking him, right? Like it's him. Another thing he does too, because he's so concerned about what's going on in the world, he has like a flip phone. So like even the pictures that he posts of himself on like social media are like super grainy. And he doesn't post a lot of pictures of like his face, right? So I didn't really put two and two together. And then when I met up with him, because he reached out and was like, I want to meet with you. And I'd asked him, I said, the first thing I said to him was, interesting. Why now? We kind of talked and then disconnected and talked and disconnected for like months. And all of a sudden you pop up. Why now? And I said to him specifically, I said, I just finished rereading again, another, like one of my favorite books by Sam Harris on free will. What popped into your head that made you today of all days reach out to try to connect with me? And he didn't understand the question. And I meant to ask him in person when I could like look him in the eyes, but I was a little high, so I didn't. It kind of bothered me that I didn't. But I wanted to query him. Like, do you ask yourself where your desires come from, or are you just blindly driven by an idea that popped into your head? And I will ask him maybe a year from now, whenever he pops up again, because I know he will. But it didn't click for me that this was the entity that I had been dreaming about until I saw him. And the moment I looked at him, I knew. I was like, oh shit. And he's like 6'2", 6'3". The guy looks like fucking Thor. I mean, he's like a beautiful man, with like gorgeous eyes or whatever. And I was like, that's him. But emotionally, I didn't feel anything, because, one, I didn't want to. That was why I took the microdose. And two, I wanted to go into a situation logically, not emotionally, so I didn't get distracted. And I felt that was what was the nature of our meeting, was to be able to sit and analyze the situation and say, okay, like this is a twin flame. This is the person that I have been dreaming about. But that doesn't mean that this is obviously a person that I'm going to spend the rest of my life with. No, I don't have a desire for that. But it was an interesting experience, to say the least. And funniest thing was that if you go through all of my notes from this month, repeatedly, I keep writing about will, over and over again. Everything I've been writing about has been about will. And case in point, I'm going to read it to you, my notes, right? So whenever I read, I write down little notes on my phone. So over the last week, everything that I've been reading about, I've been telling you guys about, but the recurring theme that it kept popping up for me was will. Okay? So here's one note that I wrote. It says, instead of saying I will, say I will. And what I meant by that is so when you have a desire for something, what we tend to say is, I would like for this to happen. I will like for this to happen. I will like this to happen. I will like this to happen. Instead of saying, I will like this to happen, say, I will this to happen. You see how the energy is there? I will this to happen. There's force there when you say, I will this to happen. There's power there. Right? It's not a passive state. I will like this to happen. No, I will this to happen. Right? What have I been talking about to you guys consistently on this fucking podcast? Right? Free will is an illusion. Free will is an illusion. It's a muscle. You have to exercise that muscle. The last episode, what did I say? It was all about will. I said it's like a 6-pack. Right? We are born with the potential for will. But you have to exercise it by doing and going against things that your body would tell you to do. Right? If you're on a fucking fast and your body goes, I'm hungry, you exert your will. Right? Your consciousness has to learn to start mastering your form. That's what I've been on. Okay? Bear in mind, I recorded last episode before I met this individual. Okay, here's another part of my notes that I wrote. Man is a God bound to form, bound to matter, and love is a force of will. Love is a force of will. Right? I don't know what one has to do with the other. I just put them together for some reason, but I'll say it again. Man is a God bound to matter, and love is a force of will. I guess what I meant by that is that if we are gods existing in matter, we forget that, right? When we love, that is an exertion of the will of God, because we look at each other through our forms. We look at our avatar and we think that it's our avatars that we are, and it's hard for us to love each other. Right? We're constantly criticizing each other. We're constantly breaking each other down. We're constantly attacking each other. But when you choose to love an individual beyond and besides, regardless of their form, exterior, you're recognizing the God in them. That is a force of will. And will with a capital W is the exertion of the force of God. When it says what it says, when you say, I will this to happen, as opposed to I will like for this to happen, that is you as a God exerting your energy over this world. That is you acting as a God, not acting as a matter-bound form. You are the consciousness, the one consciousness in form beginning to master the avatar. And that is how you become God. Remember I said this is a reality, a training simulation as you move up, as you get ready to move to the next dimension. You have to strengthen your will. And that will is a force of who you really are, your consciousness. Love is a force of will. Will with a capital W. In the same way that magicians mean will. Right? I've been talking a lot about books on magic. I'm going to indirectly talk about them as I continue my studies. But all of these books all say the same thing. I'm on my 4th book now. The book that I'm presently reading right now is called, I don't want to open it because I'm listening to it on Voice Stream. Hold on one second. Let me find the title. So I sent it to one of my friends. It's called, give me one second, guys. Sorry. It is called Initiation into Hermetics by Franz Bardon. So Initiation into Hermetics by Franz Bardon, if you're interested. But love is a force of will. That was another thing I wrote on will. All right. Then I wrote, what is faith if not the audacity of will? What is faith if not the audacity of will? Once again, will in capital form. Faith, right? When you sit, so a lot of these books on magic, what they say is you have to utilize your imagination. You have to utilize your imagination as a tool. See, right now we have been programmed to sit back and allow our imagination to be used by the avatar. So you sit down and what you start worrying about, what is anxiety, but you using your imagination or being used. I should say, let me state that again. What is worry but your avatar utilizing your imagination against you? The moment you begin to exert your will over your avatar, you can sit and shift that negative imagination to things that you actually want to happen. And then you exert your will over that. Remember I said this is something that must be strengthened over time. You're not born with free will, but you can learn it. And it's an exercise in will. For those of you, let's say thousands of people are going to listen to this, and a handful of people are going to take what are going to be able to take what I'm saying, and they're going to sit with it, and they're going to hold on to it, and they're going to start meditating on it, and they're going to start learning to control their minds, and they're going to start learning to control their bodies, and they're going to be able to sit down and realize and feel their hands and feel their feet and realize the way you sit when you're in the car and you realize your car, your windshield isn't meant for your car. The monitor in your computer in your car isn't meant for your car. The rear view mirrors isn't meant for your car. The brakes isn't meant for your car. The accelerator isn't meant for your car. The stick shift isn't meant for your car. It is meant for the driver. See, you have been looking out at the world unconsciously. You must start now looking out of the world consciously. You must now start looking out of your eyes with the same conscious intent that you look out of your windshield, with the understanding that your eyes are made for the conscious observer. The more you start doing that, my ears are made for the consciousness that's within this vehicle. Without your consciousness, your eyes are useless. Without your consciousness, your ears are useless. Start pulling all of that energy that you waste, lost in daydreams and fears and anxiety, imagining things that you don't want to happen, that your brain generates. You pull that in with the understanding that all of these images are being generated for your consciousness, to lull your consciousness to sleep. And it's not that this world is set up to imprison you. The purpose of it is it's set up for you to learn to control the avatar. And until you learn to master the avatar, and by that is you sit and you start using your organs, you start using your eyes with intent. Consciously, you start using your eyes consciously. You start using your ears consciously. You start really existing in your body instead of thinking yourself to be the body. You start detaching from form with the understanding that this is just a vehicle. You're not your Jeep. You're not your body. You're not your car. You're not your body. I'm going to say this again because it bears repeating. When you sit in your car, understand the windshield is not for your car. It is for you, the consciousness that drives the car. The horn is not for your car. It is for you, the consciousness that drives the car. The brakes, the accelerator, all of that. Now, you have been existing in a world that tells you you are the car. You are nothing but the machine. And that is the function of this world, because how else can you train to master the form? When you have to first train yourself in awareness of form. That is what this world is. Because the next world, now that once you learn to master this avatar, then the next dimension, there are going to be more complicated avatars. But you have to first show, in order to move to the next level, and to move to the next dimension, the fourth dimension, you must first show mastery of a three-dimensional being. And there's levels in every fucking game, in every fucking simulation, there is levels, and there are distractions, right? So when you get into a car, you get on a horse, okay? There's all this shit going on. The horse itself is a beast that you have to tame. The vehicle itself that you are existing in as a consciousness is a beast. You are a God bound to matter. You need will. Start to exercise your will. And the first step is you have to trust that. In a world that wants you to sleep, in a world that continuously pulls you to sleep, want is not the right word. So that was old programming saying that this world wants you to sleep. It doesn't. It doesn't want you to sleep. It doesn't want anything. It's a simulation. There's an intelligence in the world that wants you awake, which is why it directed you to listen to this. And when I say that statement, I say that exact statement with the audacity of faith. That you have to believe what I'm saying. No, not believe. Because in the word belief, there is an inherent doubt. You have to know. You have to know that what I'm saying is facts. You have to. Look, you have been deceived up until this point in your life about the nature of reality by what you have been taught in institutions of public education, where it benefits and it behooves the powers that be to believe that you are the body. Because if you consider yourself as nothing more than form, as nothing more than an avatar, nothing more than a vehicle, then the people who know that they are gods in similar vehicles can now rule you. And it's nothing against them. They are playing their function. They're playing their part. They're playing the role. And their role is to be the nightmare that forces you awake. So you must understand People always ask, why does evil exist if God is all good? Who told you God was all good? Humans aren't all good. Look at this world, look around you. It's not always day. There's always night. Nor is it always night, rather. There is day and night. And they work synergistically with each other as part of a unit. You cannot have one without the other. And each perform their function. Each perform their function. Darkness performs its function. Light performs its function. So the entities who are gods and are aware that there are gods existing in forms, the 1% that are driving the 99%, however cruel and however wicked that they are, to shape the world the way that it has been shaped, and it is shaped. They're performing their function. It's a fucked up function. If I choose to look at things in a judgmental tone instead of the fact that it is as it is. But if you were in a paradise, then why would you fucking wake up? I don't want to wake up from dreams that I have where everything is fucking beautiful. In fact, I would keep wanting to go back to it. I'll say that again. I've never had a dream that has been so beautiful where I've woken up from it and thought, all right, that's good. Let me go about my day. Nah, I want to go back there. And if I could dream consistently beautiful dreams where nothing bad ever happened and I had everything that I wanted and there was never any sort of struggle, not suffering, struggle. Suffering is optional. Struggling. I wouldn't live, guys. What the fuck? I would just sleep. I would wake up. Remember I told you about somebody that I'd met, that's how she existed. I would wake up, I'd get a job, I would eat, go back to sleep. And if I could go back to this perfect, why would I even exist in this world? You wouldn't want to wake up. But because this world is the way that it is a function of this reality. That is the function of the simulation, is to wake you the fuck up. The simulation wants you to wake up. The simulation wants you to be conscious. And until you are conscious and until you can control the form, that is what the Tibetan Book of the Dead is for. That is what they have taught for thousands of years. Right? We live in a fucking Western civilization that teaches white supremacy, that says that unless a European is saying something, it is not valid. You could choose to keep accepting that idea, or you can shake yourself free from that mindset. The choice is yours. But until it clicks for you, until you seek out knowledge from all sources, you will keep coming back here. And it's not a punishment. It's not a prison. It's a fucking training program. You will keep looping until you wake the fuck up. Wake up. Wake up. Wake up. And the messages repeat until you become sentient, until you become aware. You're looping. Wake the fuck up. And it has to repeat because, once again, it is a program meant to wake you up. This isn't an evil world. I want to briefly touch on people who keep saying that there are parasitic entities that feed on our pain. And the mindset that they want you to believe is that because there are parasitic entities that feed on your pain, we exist for these parasitic entities. They use words like this world is a farm. No, it's not. A cow shits in a field and a fly eats its shit. Does the cow exist for the fly? Does the cow shit for the fly? Or has the fly just figured out a convenient source of food? I'm going to say that again. For people who keep saying that this is a world, and I played with this idea So this is not a condemnation on them. This is a mindset shift for you. I'll say this again. There are people who believe that this world is a farm. That there are parasitic entities. Parasitic should be the key word there. You don't exist for a fucking virus. It's a virus. It's a parasite. You weren't born to be food for bacteria. You weren't born to be food for viruses. That's not what you exist for. To reduce everything that you are to a food source, anybody who attempts to do that, slap them. I don't mean physically. Don't do that. Don't let people do that to you. You see a whale in the ocean and you see minnows that sort of, eat at the whale. It's still a fucking whale. Just because these little minnows have figured out a way to sort of eat off of its body because they realize, oh wait, this is an easy food source because of just the nature of what happens to a fucking whale. That doesn't mean that the whale exists to be food source for the fucking minnows. Yes, there are four-dimensional non-corporeal entities that have figured out a way to capitalize on the pain, the energy of pain that is released in this world. But that doesn't mean that they constructed this world. At the end of the day, they're still non-corporeal beings, and so are you. So are you, so are you, so are you. You're a non-corporeal entity. The difference between them and you is you have a fucking body. Are you afraid of a person you see walking down the street simply because they don't have a car? Why should we fear things without bodies when you're a thing with a body? Why should we fear entities without form when you're an entity with a form? You have something that they don't have. They're parasites. You don't exist for them. You don't exist because of them. Even in this world now, when we sit back and we talk about all of these parasites that feed, like corporations, they feed on your energy, right? You go to work, they feed on your potential, right? You give them 9 to 5. Right? You paying your mortgage. You have a bank. These are just individuals who are feeding on your energy, your productivity, your creativity. Did you exist? Do you exist? Did you come into this world? Were you created to serve them? That's a very dangerous mindset, because then you start, it's a fucked up mindset, right? It's to say, well, because, for example, Black people were enslaved. People of color were enslaved. Indigenous people were enslaved. Am I then to believe that we exist to be slaves? To be enslaved? Do you see where that, throw that shit the fuck away right now. Don't let that thought ever cross into your mind. There are parasites, and that's it. Faith is the audacity of will. Have the audacity to believe. Nope, not believe, because that word implies that there's still doubt. Have the courage to know that you are God. Know thyself. Know that your consciousness is not the vehicle that is operating the body. Know that you do not die. Know this. Have the audacity of will. I don't even like the quote faith. I like the quote knowledge, but it's like more of a, we're messing with words there. So when I say faith, you know what I mean, but let's interject faith with knowledge. That's a stronger word. No. Have the audacity of your will. Will with a capital W. Will with a capital W. That is the exertion of the force of your consciousness to know that you are a God, temporarily bound to matter as you learn to harness and control the avatar. This isn't me. I'm not the first person saying this. This is the Upanishads. This is in the Vedic scriptures. This is what Buddha taught. This is what our modern scientists are now starting to come to. This is what the ancient Egyptians knew, fam. They knew this. They knew this. You have to know this. You have to know this. I'm going to need you to sit with that. Here's another quote. Another quote that I wrote on will. Mastering your will. Moving outside the comfort level. The zone in which the simulation is programmed to keep you in. That is how you master your will. Desire knowledge and will, and the development and strengthening of will. This keeps repeating. So these are actually two separate quotes. So the first quote that I wrote was, mastering your will by moving outside the comfort level, which is the zone in which the simulation has been programmed to keep you in. But it's not a negative intent. It's just a training program. Your job is to exert your will to break outside of it, because this place is where you go. This is where you are sent. This is a training program where you learn to train your avatar. The way you learn to train or tame a beast, any beast. Look around you. That's what this is. Consciousness, gaining, domination. We're so busy trying to control other animals, right? But we forget the beast that we are contained within. Tame your fucking beast first. Look at the shit we're doing to fucking animals in factory farms and things like that, right? But we don't. You've got it all backwards. Tame your beast. And once you start to do that, you will see no need. You will have no need to be cruel to other beasts. Tame the beast that you are. There's a shitty phrase that says the beast within. No, the God within, the beast without. Train the beast that you are in. You're going to have to listen to this episode a couple of times. These are all the quotes that I've written so far, just this week alone. And it was a recurring theme. Over and over again, I've been talking about will. I've been writing about will. Over and over again. I've put out videos about something to the effect of like, what if what we call glitches in a software program or computer or phone is actually AI in your computer gaining and displaying sentience, attempting to exercise or assert its free will, and capitalize. And I always wrote in capital. I actually didn't do a video on that yet, but I will. I will. Now, why do I keep telling you that I've been writing about will repeatedly over and over again? Well, because the individual that I met with, that I've been talking about, his name is Will. And I thought it was a bit cheeky of the simulation to embody will in a form. I'll say that again. I thought it was a bit cheeky because it didn't. His name is actually William, and it didn't click for me until after we met up. And I'm telling you, like, we just met up like just a few days ago, like 3 days ago, something like that. I don't. What was today? Anyway, sometime last week. But I've been talking about this shit for months now. leading to this form. And then I meet an individual that I've been dreaming about. And his name was Will. And now, after our interaction, after our meetup, I sat back and I asked myself, what would I normally do in this situation? I went to my natal charts. Those of you who aren't familiar with natal charts, please Google it. If you need a metaphysical explanation, so I've spoken about determinism on the podcast and how, the likes of, Einstein and things like that, who says that the universe is purely deterministic. I've spoken about Laplace's demon. I've spoken about free will being an illusion and everything being deterministic and all of that. But if you're looking for a metaphysical, an esoteric mindfuck on how, like, literally your avatar is pre-programmed and you aren't pre-programmed, your avatar is. You're not your avatar, but your avatar is pre-programmed. Look up your natal chart. All you need is your full birth date, your time of birth if you have it. You don't necessarily need your time of birth. If you don't know it, it won't. There's like 10% of stuff that it won't be able to tell you, but you'll still be able to get like 90% of who your fucking avatar is. It's so eerily precise. It like shook me. I was like, oh, okay, cool. Great. So this body is a sim. I am not a sim. I am a consciousness existing within a sim, within a beast, but it is pre-programmed. And look up your natal chart. That's all I'll say. Look up your natal chart. So I went and I looked at my natal chart and I just to reinforce what would I normally do in this situation. And I normally would have got it into my head that all of these signs, even the day that we met, when we first started talking, all of it, I first started talking to him on his like 33rd birthday, and we were 3 years apart, and all of these signs, like I would have interpreted that to mean something, to mean this is it. But instead, I examined the situation from the sense of a conscious, not being driven by the avatar and what its needs and its desires was or is, but from a conscious state. And I looked at the situation and I said to myself, this was a setup. Yeah, it was a fucking setup by the simulation. Yeah, so it takes will. First, I dream about this individual. Right? Recurring dream. I dream about him. Then he pops up. Then he presents himself. And literally our interaction, we sat and had coffee, or not coffee. It was like, we went to Nectar and we had a bowl. And so for an hour and a half, we just talked. And I watched this person sort of like, we had the same mannerisms, like we laughed the same way. We spoke about things the same way, but there were differences, right? Like when I would talk about the nature of our reality and everything sort of being an illusion, I watched his head turn and he looked down and he kind of shook his head a bit. And I knew that pain of when you start having conversations that expand the mind, your head actually physically hurts. And I always wonder about why that mechanism is in place. Why does it cause you pain when your mind starts to expand? And he sort of shifted the conversation. And I was there like 5 years ago. So I knew that pain. So I knew to ease back. I knew to ease up, but I watched that. And then I took a step back. And as I went home and I sat with my thoughts, I asked my consciousness to check what my avatar wanted to do. And my avatar wanted to chase. And instead, I said to him, I sent him a message. I said, it was a pleasure meeting you. And I said, when you are ready to have like a conversation, when you are ready to have a conversation, like a deep spiritual conversation on the nature of reality, I will be here. But you're not ready. And he said, wow. thank you. And you could tell that he was like trying to process it. And I left it. I ended the conversation. I deleted our communication, deleted our text. I went on through Instagram. I unfollowed him and I removed him from my follower on both of my accounts. And I went about my life. Because at the end of the day, the simulation will put tests in front of you. And most importantly, there are traps that will cause you, if you're not mindful, that will cause you to it will cause you to suffer. And it was a beautiful, beautiful trap. I mean, it was. I mean, he was gorgeous. We clicked all of the above, life path 7. I dreamt about him, but consciously, I looked at that situation and I said, this is a trap. This is a suffering trap. If I was unconscious, I would fall into this and I would pursue, right? I would have told myself, this is my twin flame. And then we are going to whatever I need to do to make this work, even to the detriment of myself and my life and everything that I've built with my soulmate. I would have, because I do have a strong will. But when it's unconscious, it leads to suffering. And I made a conscious effort to disconnect because it was almost too perfect. It was almost too clean. And I know what I've learned about this universe, this reality, the simulation, whatever the fuck you want to call it, is that's not, something's not, no. A lot of these things are symbolic. Like even in a dream, right? If we say that we're in a dream within a dream, we'll understand that even when you dream, a lot of the things you dream about contain symbolism. I had somebody comment on the TikTok. They kept dreaming about cats attacking them. And my response to them was, well, are you struggling with becoming independent? And she said, yes. How did you know? I said, well, cats are independent. And so there's a symbolism. Like we have different types of dreams, right? So I've spoken about how we dream about the future, right? But those are just memories of your future contained within your brain. And then that just your brain can tap into your future experiences, and it can construct narratives, not just of your past and your present, but also of your future experiences. But there are different types of dreams. There are the dreams, like I told you, of this recurring individual, right? And that's a kind of a setup kind of dream, right? Where the simulation is trying to lead you down a particular path, right? A programmed path. I don't want it. And I had to make a conscious choice. And so he was an embodiment of will. It's literally it's a bit on the nose. It's like his name was Will. His name is Will. So he was an embodiment of will. And it was a test. And the test was, what are you going to do in this situation? Are you going to choose to suffer? Are you going to get caught up? Because one thing I am, in my natal chart, it reflects this. I am in love with the feeling of being in love. I am a flirt. I get sort of it would have been just too perfect and too easy for me to get swept up in that. But I said no. I made a choice and I said no. Now, ultimately, I'm sure he will pop up again. But because I'd exerted my will instead of allowing the narrative to drive me, I chose a different reality. Yes, okay, so the universe has presented this person who seems to be my twin flame. And so that's a setup, right? Let's chase this. And that's what we're told. You do everything in your power to be with the person that you believe or you feel is your, quote, twin flame or your soulmate. But look, I have a partner. I have my partner. I have my soulmate that has done more for me than any other human being ever has on this fucking planet. I'm going to say that again. I have my soulmate. Yes, this individual might be the flame, the twin flame of my parallel self. And it's really easy to get caught up in that, but he's not my soulmate. I have my soulmate. Now, if this individual in the future is open to learn what I have to teach him about the nature of this reality, I am open when he is ready. But it's not a romantic thing. It would be strictly a teacher-student thing. I recognize now that I do have a connection, because every interaction I have in this world, I ask myself, what am I to learn here? What am I supposed to be learning here? What am I being taught here? Right? And that's the lesson. I am now. I know. I mean, I kind of suspected, like, think about the shit that I talked to you guys about. I'm an artist. Why am I talking about quantum physics? Why am I interested in quantum physics? Well, clearly because there's a version of myself in a parallel universe who is. And so they're pulling from me. I'm sure that I've spoken about this on this podcast. Like, maybe I think on an episode last year where I said, like, you sort of trail in. And so there's a version of Jolie, that is a scientist, is a physicist, and I must be tapping into her knowledge, just like she must be painting, or at least attempting to paint at some, like right now. You are connected. And so the way I look at it, I see he will, was of a confirmation of my suspicions that am I entangled with my parallel selves. And I've spoken about this. I've put out several videos. So these videos are representations of ideas and recurring thoughts that I've had. I've put them in forms of entertainment, but that's what they are. You guys, when you watch my videos rather, you're watching my thoughts, or at least a small iceberg, a tip of the icebergs of my thoughts. So he was a physical, quote, physical, understand that this is all an illusion. Even the idea of things being physical is an illusion, but he was the embodiment, a manifestation of the answers to questions that I had had. And the simulation triggered him and made him reach out to me at a point when I needed an answer. And I sat down and had a conversation with him, and I watched him. And he was sentient, but he just wasn't quite there. And that's okay, because that wasn't the point of the meeting. The point of the meeting was to get confirmation so that I can then turn around and share. It's all cause and effect, a series of cause and effect. So I've met the twin flame. I've met my twin's flame, right? The twin flame of my parallel self. And it was interesting, and as a confirmation, it's good to sit and see. And it was a beautiful experience for me. I have to say, I didn't let him know all of this. But I'm sharing this with you. But it was beautiful to see, like, what the partner of my parallel self, who they're with. That's remarkable. That's a magical experience for me. I thought that was a beautiful experience. But I have my flame, my soul flame, and he's with me, and he's good to me. I have nothing to offer this individual beyond knowledge. See, we live in a world, you have to catch your programming. If I still subscribed to the programming of the world, if this was a movie, because remember, these movies, these TV shows, they're meant to program you so that you can react to similar situations in the same way. So if this was a movie and I would have met him, then all of these signs would have pointed to me doing everything I needed to do to be with him. No, thank you. I exert my will. I exert my will to have a beautiful life with the person who has made my life beautiful. How many of you would choose to do the same thing? Choose to do the same thing. And if I never interact with this human being again, I would feel okay. Like I said, I am open to give knowledge. That is my function. So should he seek me out in the future to say, you mentioned these things, please, I'm interested and I want to know more. I will give him the knowledge the way I give you guys knowledge, the way I share my knowledge. I will point him in the direction the way I would do anybody, my best friends, my cousins, whatever. And I will sit and I will tell him, this is what's going on. This is what I think is going on. But I have nothing else to give you beyond a friendship and what I've known. You see, we're programmed too quickly to be driven by our basal desires. And this was in my notes as well. I just have to find it. Perfect. As soon as I open my notes, there it is. It says a coward is someone who neglects to take care of his moral dignity in order to blindly obey his natural instincts. That's the beast. So we are living in a world that says, trust the instincts of your beasts, not your intuition. Trust your instincts. Like we're animals, right? Because you're programmed to believe that you are the beast. And so it would have been cowardly for me to say, oh, well, all the signs point to this, so I have to chase this, because there's this fear that, well, what if, right? If I don't chase this person, where all of the signs, the simulation, it's like on those cartoons where all the fucking arrows point to this individual and the lights are blaring. Like even our natal charts were just like, it said that like super, I did all of that because that's how I roll. I want to know. That would make me a coward. A coward is someone. Now, I got this from the first book of magic. No, the second book of magic that I mentioned to you guys. It was called High Magic, by Eli Levi, but it's called High Magic. I talked about this in the last episode. I don't want to open up my Audible because it'll kick me off the recording. But he said this: a coward is someone who neglects to take care of his moral dignity. Moral dignity. Moral dignity. In order to blindly obey her natural instincts. Another thing from it: the visible is a manifestation of the invisible. I wrote all of this down before I interacted with Will. What came first? All of time is happening at once. The flow of time is the illusion. I was always going to meet him. And because of that meeting, I had wrote these notes out and I had read these books in order to prepare me for the meeting. I'll say it one more time, because this is real talk. A coward is someone who neglects to take care of her moral dignity in order to blindly obey her natural instincts. What is it here? Will. Are you a slave to your natural form? Or are you a god? Love is a force of will. I love my partner. So much so that my love for him has become a force that energizes the God being that is in me. To exert the will over my basal instincts, over my programming that would cause me to choose a path that is pre-programmed. And that is how you begin to exercise will. This is probably one of the realest, I'm not, I don't know if you guys realize how hard it is. It even says this on my natal charts. I don't like sharing personal bits of information with people, period. So this is probably one of the hardest episodes for me to do. And once again, it was an exertion. It took a tremendous force of will for me to sit and record this. You could even hear me. I'm sure you can hear me sort of going back and forth. So it was a bit of struggle here because I didn't want to record this because I'm sharing a bit more than I would normally do with anybody. This is very private to me, but every once in a while I feel compelled to put out an episode. And this just happens to be one of those episodes. I do operate, or what gives me solace is the understanding that there's only a handful of people I know would have listened to this far. So I am protected by the fact that the people who will listen to this are people who want the information and will be able to do with the information what was needed from this information being shared. So that is a sacrifice that I make, but it's for my love for you that I've chosen to share this. Because I know on some level, my experience is if I don't share it, you might end up making a mistake because a bunch of signs seem to point into a particular direction, and then because of your programming in this world, you take all of these signs to mean something different, and then you end up suffering. You end up suffering. And then you release pain, which then becomes food for the parasitic entities that feed off of our pain. So, I have to share with you guys. It's a muscle. You're not born with it. You're born with the potential to develop it. Will. I'm talking about will. We're born with the potential to develop it, but it takes conscious effort. Conscious, consistent effort. You can sit and say this world is, a prison. Yeah, it can be a prison. But guess whose choice that is? Yours. Anything can become a prison. But we made it this way. All of us being one. So I had a magical experience in the sense of interesting, in the sense of exertion of will, in a sense of audacity of will, in the sense of strengthening my will, right? Keep coming back to the audacity of will. There's this FOMO that if I were unconscious would kick in. What if? What about the world, the life you could have had with this person? And my response to that is, somewhere out there, my parallel self has a life with this person. And that is my faith. It's just not going to be this incarnation, and that's fucking okay. I am content with the life that I have with my person. I'm content. Content. It's a magical word in a world that continues to push you to consume and consume and consume more and more and more, and to never sit and settle and be at peace, to be content. To be content. That is magic. All right. That was a doozy, wasn't it? Thanks to all of you who listened all the way through. I would implore you, because that is what my intuition is telling me to share with you. Listen again and again. Because every time you listen, you will get something out of it. I get nothing from this podcast except for the satisfaction of sharing my knowledge. That is the pure and absolute pleasure that I get from it, because I am playing my part. So, me telling you to repeat the same, podcast over and over again doesn't necessarily benefit me. I mean, okay, sure, there's more plays or whatever, but that's not why I'm saying it. So I just need to address that, because I know the internal monologue in some of your minds is probably whispering that, which you really need to learn to tell your internal monologue to shut the fuck up, or just dismiss it. It's like Siri that's just running its mouth. Just dismiss it. I will tell you to do the same thing with an audiobook. Every time you listen to something, you get something new out of it. And whatever it is that I'm saying to you now may not be pertinent to your life right now, but that doesn't mean it will not be soon. Remember what I said? I read all of these books and I wrote down all of these notes to myself before I was even aware that I was going to have said experience. And now, after having the experience, meeting this individual, I look back at my notes and I realized that these notes, the specific things that I chose to write, ended up being what helped me make a good decision. Thanks for listening.